What's up, everybody? Big Swede coming at you once again from Swede Studios. So in the last video we posted, I was going over my process for recording and mixing heavy rhythm guitars. And that video did really well. A lot of people watched it, picked up quite a few subscribers off of that video. Thank you very much for watching, subscribing. The people that commented, love that stuff. I love the back and forth. So it seems to me that you guys are interested in hearing that type of stuff. Some tips and tricks in the studio to get your mixes better. So I think I'm going to start doing more of these type videos in between releasing songs, be it covers or original stuff, whatever. I'm going to try to do some of these little tips and tricks videos. I'm not going to go super in depth, like do full mix tutorials or anything like that. But, just stuff to help out the people that are maybe just getting into this, help you guys get your mixes to the next level. All right, for this video, we're going to take a little bit of a step back first, though, and I'm going to answer a question that I get asked a ton. I'll post something online, and I almost always will get a question, something along the lines of, what do I need to start recording my own stuff? What gear do I need to buy? How much money do I need to spend in order to get some good quality recordings of my stuff? And, it's a tough question to answer because there's a lot of variables that go into choosing what pieces of gear you need. I always start out by asking two questions, though. Number one, what's your budget? That is going to determine a lot of things. How much money you have to put into this is going to determine what you absolutely need to spend your money on and what you can maybe wait on and buy later. Number two is what are your needs? What are you trying to record? Are you recording just yourself? Or are you trying to record an entire band? Again, that is going to play into what specific gear you need to buy. And again, what maybe you can wait on and buy at a later date. So we're going to kind of go into this and I'll give you what you absolutely need to buy for certain scenarios. And then, give you some other options that you can, maybe add on if you have the money. But we got to keep those things in mind. What's your budget and what's your needs? In order to do this video in a decent amount of time, I'm going to have to make some assumptions here, though. Number one assumption is going to be that you already have a space in mind to do this, be it a spare bedroom, a garage, a basement like I've got here. You already have a place in mind in your house or wherever that you're going to put this studio. That's assumption number one. Assumption number two is going to be that you already have a computer. We're not going to go into the whole computer debate in this video, Mac versus PC. It really doesn't matter. As long as you have a decent computer with decent specs, it's probably going to be able to run most of the software you're going to need. Obviously, if you start getting into big sessions with like really big track counts and you're running a lot of plugins and virtual instruments and stuff, obviously the better spec'd out your computer is, the better your results are going to be. It's going to be easier for you to mix and record. But for the purposes of this video, you just want to get into starting recording your stuff. Any computer that's, really like 5 years old or newer is probably going to be able to run it just fine. You probably run it on an older computer if you wanted to. You just got to watch, what you're using. And then the final assumption we're going to have here is that you already have the instruments that you're trying to record. If you're a guitar player, you've already got guitars, amps, whatever the case is, drums, whatever you're trying to record, I'm going to assume you already have those instruments. We're not going to talk about that stuff. All right. With those things in mind, let's jump in and start talking about the first thing we need to get to start building a home project studio. All right, number one on our essentials list is going to be an audio interface. I've had people ask me the question before, do you need an audio interface? Can't you just plug directly into the back of the computer and record that way? The short answer is yes, I guess, but it's not ideal. Like your average desktop is going to have like a 3.5 millimeter jack for audio in. The problem is most of the things you're going to be trying to plug into it won't have a 3.5 millimeter plug. So you're going to have to deal with adapters to go from whatever it is to the 3.5. Also, without getting too technical, that jack is expecting a certain level. And not everything you plug into it is going to be at that level. Some's going to be lower, some's going to be higher. It's going to cause issues in your recording. So in my opinion, an audio interface is an absolute must. So in its simplest terms, what an audio interface is it's taking your analog signals, it is converting them into digital and sending them to your computer. And then on the other end, it's sending that digital signal back out to the interface, converting that back to analog for you to hear through your monitor speakers or your headphones, whatever you're listening through. So basically all the analog to digital and digital to analog conversion is happening inside of the interface. Now, when it comes to interfaces, there is a wide range of options to choose from, differing sets of like inputs and outputs. Also price. Price varies from under $100 to several $1,000 depending on what you're looking at. All right, so the biggest thing to consider other than price when you're trying to decide on an audio interface is the number of inputs and outputs that it has. Again, it goes back to that question of what do you need? What are you trying to accomplish here? If you're just by yourself, you're doing a singer-songwriter type thing, you got a vocal mic and an acoustic guitar, or maybe you're just building a song track by track, you don't need a whole lot of inputs. 1 or 2 inputs is going to do just fine for you. Now, on the other hand, if you're trying to record a full band, or if you're recording drums and you have to mic up individual drums, you're going to need more inputs. For the sake of argument here, we're going to concentrate right now on it's just you and you're trying to record your own stuff here. And then I'll give you some options as well if you're looking for more inputs to do a full band scenario or something like that. All right, now something to be aware of when we're talking about the number of inputs on an interface is the advertised number of inputs is not always going to be the same as the number of usable mic preamps. I'm going to use the Focusrite Scarlett series here as an example, but this is applicable to any manufacturer. You have to pay attention to the number of mic preamps that an interface has in addition to the total number of inputs. Focusrite's naming convention for their interfaces is generally going to be a number, the letter I, and then another number. So for example here, the Scarlett 4i4. 4 inputs, 4 outputs. That's what that means. The problem here is, although the 4i4 has 4 inputs, only 2 of those inputs are microphone preamps. The other 2 inputs are going to be line level inputs. Why is that important? Line level inputs are only good for connecting other pieces of external gear to your interface. So if you have an external mic preamp or a compressor or an EQ, those types of things that you want to connect into your system, you're going to use line level inputs for that. Problem with that is right now we're talking about just getting started to record your own stuff. Most people just getting started building their own studio don't have a ton of external outboard gear laying around. Those line level inputs are not going to be useful for you because you can't plug an instrument into them. You can't plug a microphone into them. It's expecting a much higher signal. So when you plug in those lower signal devices into that spot, it doesn't hear it. There's not enough volume there. Down the line, when you start maybe adding things to your studio, you start building things up, those line level inputs become more important at that point. But for right now, we're concerned about microphone preamps. All right, so let's start at the bottom end and assume that we just need a couple of inputs. We're going to be building songs track by track, or maybe we just need a microphone, a vocal mic, and we got an acoustic guitar, something small like that. We only need a couple of inputs. What's the best way to go? A lot of people, a really popular interface is the Focusrite Solo. And that's where a lot of people want to go right off the bat when they're getting into this because it is the cheapest model they have. I tend to steer people away from the Solo for one reason. The input jacks on the Solo are very limiting in my opinion. It is essentially a 2i2. You have 2 inputs and 2 outputs, but the big difference is on the front of the interface, you're going to have input 1 is going to be a 1/4-inch jack, so like an instrument cable, and then the second input is going to be an XLR, so you can plug a microphone into it. The problem with that is, what happens if you want to plug 2 microphones in? You can't do it without buying an adapter to go from XLR to 1/4-inch. And same thing goes if you wanted to plug 2 instruments in. You can't. You have to, again, buy another adapter that goes from 1/4-inch to an XLR, I would tell people to step up to the 2i2. What the 2i2 gives you is two inputs that have what's called a combo jack, where you can plug in either a 1/4-inch instrument cable or an XLR cable. You can choose. So you can plug two instrument cables into it. You can plug two XLR inputs into it. That's the one I would go for if you're going for the lower end. You only need a couple of inputs and you just want to get rolling with it. The 2i2 is where I would go. And again, same goes for other manufacturers. As long as you have two combo inputs, you're good to go. All right, so let's say you're looking to step up a little bit. You're maybe looking to record some drums, or maybe you want to do like full band stuff, and you need more than those two inputs to record simultaneously. I'm going to continue using Focusrite here as an example, just because I'm pretty familiar with the Focusrite line, but this applies to any manufacturer. You just got to pay attention to the number of mic preamps versus the number of inputs, like we talked about earlier. Focusrite does offer the 4i4 and the 8i6, but like we talked about earlier, the problem with those interfaces is there's still only two mic preamps. The additional inputs are going to be either line level inputs or in some cases SPDIF inputs, which is like a digital RCA jack. Not many things use SPDIF anymore, so it's not really that helpful. If you're looking to have more than two mic preamps, in this case, you would need to step up to the 18 line. So like either the 18i8 or the 18i20, what I have. The 18i8 is going to give you four mic preamps, and then the additional ones are going to be line inputs and SPDIF, ADAT, stuff like that. And then the 18i20, which I have, is going to give you 8 microphone preamps. Now, once you get up to that level, you can then expand it even further, which I've done on my setup. I have the 18i20, and then I also have what's called an Octopre, which is an additional 8 mic channels that are then connected to the 18i20 via ADAT. So I have 16 mic preamps in my setup. Now again, this is the Focusrite Scarlett line, but these ideas, like I said, are applicable to other manufacturers as well. There's a ton of options out there to choose from. If you're looking for something a little bit more budget friendly, a little bit more bang for your buck, you have the Behringer UMC series, very similarly named. Like you get the 202, the 404, the 1820, and then another popular option out there for a lot of guys is the Universal Audio Apollo series. Those are much more expensive once you start getting into the multi-channel interfaces. You're talking several $1,000s versus a couple hundred. So, budget comes into this as well. Okay, next up on our essentials list is going to be some software. We need some software in the computer that's going to capture the audio we're sending out from the interface and then allow us to manipulate and work with that audio, kind of like you would do on a traditional analog recording console. What that's called is a digital audio workstation, or a DAW, or DAW for short. And that's essentially what it is. It's a virtual recording console inside of your computer. You're gonna record your signals coming in, and then you can adjust your faders to manipulate the volume. You can add effects in. You can edit. Anything you can do in a studio, you can do inside of your computer with the DAW. Now, contrary to what some people will say, there is no best DAW. There's no DAW that sounds better than another DAW. They all do the same thing. They just go about doing them differently in terms of workflow. So, what works for me might not be great for you, depending on what you're doing. A perfect example of this is a lot of guys that create beats and do a lot of virtual instrument type stuff, loops and MIDI. FL Studio is one of the popular DAWs for that type of music because the workflow lends itself to make the process very easy. Whereas somebody like me who's doing more traditional recording, like live instruments and bands, I might prefer something different. And in fact, I do. I've used FL Studio before. I've used a lot of these DAWs. And they all do the same thing. They just do them differently. And you might find that the workflow of one DAW works better for you than something else. So the best advice I could give you is to try out different ones. Or talk to people that are doing the same kind of thing that you are and see what they prefer. That's going to kind of get you in the ballpark. Now, as far as recommendations go, best bang for your buck, I don't think gets any better than Reaper right now. A license costs $60. With that, you get 2 full versions of updates. So right now, Reaper's on version 7. So you get all of version 7 updates. And then when version 8 comes out, you would get that. And all of the subsequent version 8 updates you would get as well. When version 9 rolls around, you wouldn't get that one. But the version 8 you have would keep working forever. It's not like you'd lose it. So if you didn't want to upgrade to 9, you don't have to. If you did, you would have to pay the $60 again, and you'd get your, again, 2 full versions before you'd have to pay it again. But, if you think about like the life cycle of like how often major versions come out, it's generally 2 years between full versions. So for that $60, you're getting 4, maybe 5 years of use out of that and getting updates the entire time. That's a pretty good deal for $60. As far as me personally, what I'm using right now, I did use Reaper for several years. It's a great program. I've since moved on to Miscellaneous Studio One. Just workflow-wise, it works really good for me. I like the way it's laid out. It looks nice. Works great with my hardware that I've got as well. Good integration between the control surface and the DAW. So Persona Studio One, I have no problems with recommending that one as well. It is more expensive than Reaper. There's also a lot of other options out there that are great. So like I said, try out as many as you can or talk to some people that are doing things similar to you and kind of get an idea of what they're using. All right, our next essential item, we need to be able to hear the music we're working on. So we need to talk about monitor speakers and or headphones. I say and or because some people just aren't in a position, their situation to have their mixes out on monitor speakers. Maybe they live in an apartment, thin walls, neighbors are mad, or maybe you're just working on music, in the middle of the night. Other people are sleeping. You don't want to wake them up. You just can't have music playing loudly through speakers. Headphones are an option there. Now, I will always advocate for mixing on a good set of monitor speakers. I think that's the best way to get a good feel of everything. But in a pinch, headphones will work. You just have to make sure that the headphones you're using are designed for studio use, specifically for mixing. Open back headphones work great for mixing. Much better than closed back. Definitely much better than a commercially available headphone that's designed for listening to music, like Beats by Dre, Skull Candy, stuff like that. The problem with those types of headphones is they're designed to enhance certain frequency ranges, specifically bass. Most of the time, bass is boosted on those, so you're not getting an accurate picture of what your mix actually sounds like. So get yourself some headphones that are designed for mixing in mind. Now, if you can mix on monitor speakers, I think that's the better way to go. And much like everything else we're talking about, there's a wide range of different models, manufacturers, sizes that you can choose from. One thing to keep in mind when you're talking about monitor speakers is I always tell people to go with the biggest speaker that you can. Whatever the biggest speaker you can afford is, as long as it's good quality, that's what you should go with. The smaller the speaker, generally, the less low-end information you're going to get, so you're not going to hear a ton of bass through a 3-inch set of monitor speakers. I'm running Yamaha HS5s, and there's not a ton of low-end in my mixes either. Generally, what I'll do if I'm wanting to kind of check low end is I'll actually throw some headphones on to check my low end to make sure things are good, or take a mix out to the car, do the old car test. But yeah, the smaller the speaker, generally the less low end information you're going to get. So me personally, I would say 5-inch speakers at a minimum, bigger if you can. But again, lots of different options out there. I'm not going to give you specifics on what you should buy. That would be a much longer video. All right, the next essential item here is going to be microphones. This is another one that's going to vary widely. Go back to that question of what do you need? What's your goal in building this studio here? You might need 1 mic. You might need 12. You might not need any. Depends on what you're doing. So ask yourself that question of what am I doing here? What do I need? If you're just, building a song track by track yourself, maybe you only need one, maybe two mics. If you're recording guitar or maybe you're doing vocals. If you're just a guitar player that's using an amp modeler or using like amp sim plugins on your computers, you might not need any mics if you're not doing vocals or anything like that. Now, if you're recording a full band or if you're recording drums, you're probably going to need a lot of mics. So it depends on your situation. I'm not going to go into specific microphones you should buy. That could be a whole video in and of itself. I will say, you can't go wrong with a trusty Shure SM57 for miking up guitar cabinets. They even work on vocals in a pinch. But again, microphones, that could be a video in and of itself. So we're not going to go that in depth. Just know that you got to know what you're trying to do in order to figure out how many and what types you might need. All right, finally, we're going to talk about a few miscellaneous items that you might need to get yourself up and running. First, if you are running microphones, you are going to need microphone cables. You're probably going to need some mic stands. You might need a pop filter if you're doing vocals. If you are recording instruments directly into the computer, a good DI box is something that I would recommend investing in as well. Now, here's the one that gets a lot of people. They can dive down the rabbit hole and spend a ton of money when they don't really need to, and that is plugins. What plugins are is essentially it's different things that you can drop onto your tracks in your DAW. It could be anything from effects like EQ, compression, reverb, delays, things like that, to basically alter the sound, color the sound of the things you've recorded. The thing is, most DAWs, not all of them, but most DAWs come with a pretty decent set of stock plugins that you can do all of those things with. I would recommend when you first start out, stick with the stock plugins that your DAW comes with, if it comes with them. Before you start diving in and buying a bunch of different things, because what ends up happening is you get what's called option paralysis. You have so many different options at your fingertips that you spend more time thinking about what plugins you should use than actually working on the music. So stick with the stock plugins until you get the hang of them, and then maybe there's a plugin that does something a little bit better than what the stock plugin does, and at that point, think about upgrading to a different plugin. But for the time being, when you're first starting out, stick with the stock plugins, keep it simple, and just learn the craft of actually recording and mixing. All right, guys, there you go. My list of what I would consider to be essential items in getting your own home project studio off the ground and start recording your own music. Just remember that the gear is only a small part of the equation here. The practice of actually doing it and doing it often is what's going to make your mixes better. So get out there, start recording your stuff, keep mixing stuff, and your mixes will get better and better as you go along. If there are any other topics that you're interested in, if you have questions, if there's things you're struggling with in your mixes, hit me up in the comments, and if I get enough of a specific topic, I'll do a video on it. We'll keep rolling with these things, like I said, in between releases of songs. We'll do some tips and tricks here and there, and I look forward to hearing from you, and we'll catch you on the next one.